I I just want to talk about a win. Is that really so much to ask? What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R for yet another Seattle Kraken loss. This time to the Anaheim Ducks, 7-4, and no, it's not actually as bad as 7-4 makes it look. Two of those are empty net goals that come at the end of the game. Really, this is another one-goal game that the Kraken come out on the wrong side of. Look, there's no way around the fact that this start to the season has been frustrating and disappointing to say the least, but I think this probably serves as good a time as any to maybe take a bit of a step back from that frustrating start and just remember that at least for this first season, we should just be glad that we have a hockey team and enjoy the fact that the NHL is finally in Seattle. I still don't think that this turns out to be a bottom five team. I do think that this team has it in them, and even the stats that they've built up to this point outside of the wins and losses point to the fact that this is a team that could still make a run at things later on in the season, even regardless of how it looks right now. But even if they don't, it's just fun to have a team. It's fun to see the city get excited about hockey outside of the one or two bars here and there. It's fun to see a bunch of new people coming to enjoy and appreciate this sport that many of us have enjoyed from afar for years and years, hoping and praying that a team would eventually come here. And yes, obviously we want them to be good. We want to see them win games, get to the playoffs, and eventually hang a Stanley Cup banner up next to the Metropolitans one, this time that says Kraken on it. But even if that doesn't happen this year or in the next couple of years to come, whatever happens, they still will be ours, and that much can't get taken away from us no matter how many games in a row they lose. And for what it's worth, even with this being their third loss in a row and now dropping them to a 4-9-1 record, this was still a pretty fun game to watch, even if the Kraken never had a lead. It was one that, even if they did keep giving up goals on one end, they kept responding and doing it pretty quick on the other, which kept them in the game and kept this one fun to watch at the very least, down to just about the last couple minutes. And yes, sure, the Ducks are absolutely on paper a team that the Kraken should be able to handle and beat no problem. They were supposed to be one of the worst teams in the division, but coming into this game, they were on a 5-game win streak and had Gibson playing very well in net for them. So even if they aren't the Edmonton Oilers, Tampa Bay Lightning, or any kind of cup contending team, it's not like they were a winless 0-10-1 type of team either. Meanwhile, for the Kraken, regardless of who the opponent was, there was a fair amount of good news coming into this game. For one, it's the first of a 6-game homestand where they've played considerably better at the early part of this season, where on the road they look mostly lost, especially defensively, and it definitely shows in their 1-6-1 record on the road. Meanwhile, at home, they played their 5 best games so far, all at home, with a 3-2 record to show for it. On top of that, they finally got Jared McCann back from COVID protocol after he spent 2 weeks there, having not played for the team since their win over the Minnesota Wild back on October 28th. And this is definitely one that is going to make a pretty big difference, considering when he left to go on COVID protocol, he was the leading scorer on the team. And of course, it was also good to see Ryan Donato back after he had that spill in Arizona, and definitely relieving to see that Yanni Gourde was back in the lineup after he left the game in Vegas early and didn't return for the third period. So while we still are waiting on Colin Blackwell to get healthy, who has been skating in practices, as well as Mason Appleton, who we still don't have a timetable on, this is just about as healthy, especially at the top end for the forwards, that this team has been since that game against Minnesota where they looked to be at their best. And of course, with that being the case, and especially McCann's return, there was going to have to be a little bit of mixing and matching to get the lines to work on the forward end. But they definitely went a little bit crazy when it came to that mixing and matching, at least with the lines at the very start of the game, as this was the biggest shakeup we'd seen since, well, probably just about 2 weeks ago. But with all that being said, these lines definitely did not stick for the entirety of the game, as we did see some different looks throughout the course of the second and third periods. And the Kraken came out of the gate strong, looking really good, creating a lot of pressure, and while they didn't get a whole lot of shots off on net, they were at least creating some chances to get there, even if they ended up either getting blocked or missing the net. Eberle in particular had one very good chance that ends up going off the side of the net. But even with all that momentum and pressure that the Kraken are able to establish early on, again, they really don't get too many shots off on net, which was certainly a problem for them in the first period. Meanwhile, for the Ducks, it doesn't take them too many opportunities going the other way to get one to count for them, as a 3-on-2 ends up having the Kraken play it a little bit strangely defensively. Both defenders come over to one side to defend two of the Duck players, while Comtois is left completely open on the other side. The pass gets to him, and one-on-one, Grubauer is able to make the save. Unfortunately, he has to come out of the goal to make it, and the puck ends up right in front of a gaping open net. The good news is that Dunn is the first one to get his stick on it. The bad news is that as he tries to clear it, he clears it right into Mason McTavish's leg, which it bounces off, goes backwards, and into the net. It's 1-0 Ducks. This is definitely one that the scorers had a bit of a hard time with, as originally it was just Comtois that had the assist, then they added a secondary assist onto it, and then eventually just took both assists away, so it ends up being an unassisted goal for Mason McTavish, who never even puts his stick on it. So already it's not looking particularly good, as it's starting to look a lot like how they play on the road, with all sorts of pressure on one side, but just not getting enough shots off on net while they have it. Then allowing defensive slip-ups to have odd man rushes on net, and Grubauer just not able to come up with saves when they need him to. After this goal, though, the feel of the period changes pretty significantly. Unfortunately, it's not really in the Kraken's favors for pretty much the entirety of the rest of the first period, with a couple of exceptions. The Ducks are pretty much in control and have the vast majority of the offensive zone time, getting shot after shot on net. The good news is that this seems to be what Grubauer needs to get into the game, as he is absolutely up to the task and is the only reason that the Kraken don't come out of the first period with the score looking worse than 1-0 Ducks. By the end of it, outside of how it looks on the scoreboard, this is probably one of the worst periods that the Kraken have played, really since that Philadelphia game, and yes, I'm including what happened in Arizona and that third period against Edmonton. Sure, the scoreboard looked worse in those cases, but it really could have looked a lot worse here as well, as the Kraken get outshot 14-4 in the period, and not only that, but those 14 shots, a number of them came on odd man rushes, including 2 from free breakaways. And Anaheim is able to carry that momentum into the start of the second period, even if it does end up being the Kraken that get the first good chance off on goal, as Soucy has a nice pass that he's trying to get to Donskoy, who's parked in front of the net, but the puck ends up going off of Donskoy's skate before it can get to his stick and out of the play. But then going the other way, we would get our next big momentum shifting play, as in the defensive zone, Lauzon absolutely plasters Shattenkirk into the boards. Shattenkirk would end up being slow to get up and leave for a period of time, though he would return later in the second period. The Ducks, somewhat understandably considering it was on Shattenkirk, do not take this hit very well, and Lauzon finds himself in a fight right after laying the hit. He is able to win this one pretty decisively and takes his man to the ice fairly quickly. And maybe it's because of that, even though there were some punches thrown and gloves coming off, that the refs decide that this isn't gonna be a fighting call, as instead the two guys trade roughing calls, and Lauzon gets an interference tacked on for his hit on Shattenkirk, which almost none of this makes any sense to me. The hit seems like while it could have been interference, and interference is a reasonable call there, it probably could have been boarding just as easily, and probably that would have been the better call here. Meanwhile, with the roughing calls, yeah, this was definitely a fight, so how they managed to avoid 5-minute majors, I'm not sure, but they do, at least for now. Either way, it's Anaheim to the power play, with the power play unit that is coming into this game pretty hot. Meanwhile, for the Kraken, it's a chance for the penalty kill to get back going in the right direction after having led up a power play goal against two woeful power play units in Arizona and then Vegas. But we really don't get a chance to see how that would have ended up playing out, as just 30 seconds in, the Ducks get caught for hooking, and we go to 4-on-4. Unfortunately, while the Kraken were able to kill off at least 30 seconds of power play, they were not able to deal with 4-on-4 for particularly long, as Troy Terry, who definitely has the hottest stick for the Ducks at the moment, takes one shot off on net, and it finds the back of the net behind Grubauer, and just like that, the Ducks are up 2-0. Now, we've mentioned at least at some point in each of the last couple of games that the Kraken seem to have started to develop this habit of allowing quick responses to their goals, especially when they come in big moments. And having this feeling of, even if the Kraken do get a goal in a somewhat big moment, you almost just don't feel like you can celebrate, as it really seems like you should be expecting something to be coming going the other direction quickly after the fact. Now, obviously, at this point in the Ducks game, for the Kraken, they can't have given up a quick response goal because, well, you need to score a goal of your own in order for that to have happened. So why do I bring this up? Well, it's because it seems like the Kraken in this game decided that it was going to be their turn to play that quick response game. And sure enough, less than a minute after this second goal by Anaheim, a nice play by Eberle to hold the zone allows him to get control, and he finds Schwartz breaking towards the net behind the defense. He's one-on-one against Gibson, and he's able to beat him in close range and bring the Kraken within one. And sure, at this point in the game, shots, possession, and just about every advanced stat are still pointing to the fact that Anaheim is absolutely dominating this game. But you know what? The Kraken have done their fair share of dominating the advanced stats and possession graphs throughout the course of this season, and it really hasn't done them much good at all when it comes to winning games. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as they're within just one goal as they are at this point, I don't really care, especially considering at this point it really seems like the Kraken are just doing their best to make advanced stats look completely useless and anybody that follows them a complete idiot. With all that having been said though, one of the relatively few stats that the Kraken have consistently not been coming out on the right side of is their face-off win percentage. Game after game, they just are getting beat, and often beat bad in the face-off circle. We've talked about their issues on defense and allowing odd man rushes, certainly their issues in goal and those really not very good looking save percentages that Kraken goaltenders have so far, as well as certainly plenty of time talking about the power play and all of the issues going on there. Fortunately, we got a bit of a break from that one tonight, but we haven't spent enough time talking about the face-off and how much of a problem this is becoming from the Kraken, even if it is flying somewhat under the radar to this point. Okay, sure, so face-offs have been a bit of an issue, but why bring it up now? Well, that's because right after Grubauer makes a very nice save on a wide-open Getzlaf who got lost in the defense after another defensive miscue, the ensuing face-off in the Kraken zone is won for the 18th of the first 27 times in this game by the Anaheim Ducks. It goes right back to Mahura, and he winds up and fires a shot off a net that of course goes right in past Grubauer, who does have just about every player on the ice in front of him between him and the shot. None of which would have been a problem at all if you could have just at least partially contested the face-off and not allowed a completely free win. Admittedly, the good news for the Kraken here is they do win 18 of the next 25 face-offs to close out the game, but right now that doesn't make a huge difference as the Ducks are now back up by 2 points. It's 3-1. The other piece of good news for the Kraken is that they're still riding this whole theme of the quick response goals, and this time, just over a minute after Anaheim took a 2-goal lead, I know, slacking a little bit, once again, the Kraken are able to respond as Donato throws a pass in front of the Anaheim net to McCann, and while it doesn't get to McCann's stick, it does hit his skate and goes right through the 5-hole and into the net to bring the Kraken once again within one. It's 3-2. And for McCann, it's his 4th of the season and right back where he left off when he went on COVID protocol. Now out of it and right back onto the scoreboard. And at this point, we're just 8 minutes into the second period, and there have already been 4 goals in this period alone, so it's starting to feel like things could get out of hand pretty quickly in either direction, especially considering the number of big saves that we saw in the first period just to keep the score the way it was going into that intermission. But things do start to slow down, momentum both directions really doesn't get going a whole heck of a lot, and the only other goal in this period doesn't end up coming until the 16-minute mark. Unfortunately, it does come for Anaheim, and this time it's Shattenkirk coming back from the locker room, and he takes a shot off on Grubauer that I honestly don't know that he was even expecting or thinking it would go in. He was probably just looking for a rebound more than anything else, but it bounces off of Grubauer's shoulder, up in the air, down onto the ice and into the net behind Grubauer, he throws his head up in exasperation as even he knows this is absolutely one that he has to have. It's certainly one of, if not the softest goal that he's let into this point this season, and that is saying something considering the much less than ideal start that he's gotten off to. Sadly, this time there's no quick response goal from the Kraken, maybe due in part to the fact that McCann ends up leaving just before this goal to the locker room early after having been shoved to the ice by his face on a play that probably could have and maybe even should have drawn a call, but the refs decide to let it go as they let quite a few things go in this game, which actually reminds me that earlier on in this period, the Ducks did finally get their official fight with Lauzon, even though there was a fight directly after the hit that we already talked about. That one was considered traded roughings for whatever reason, even though it was clearly a fight and gloves were off and all that. This time there was no mistaking it. This was a full-on gloves dropped, circle around each other, and then go at it. And as far as fights go, if you like hockey fights, this was a good one. As they said on the broadcast, there was not a whole lot of defense and a lot of offense as they were trading some pretty big punches. Eventually, once again, Lauzon taking a Duck to the ice. All that out of the way and dealt with, though, we do get to the third period with the Ducks leading 4-2. And for the Kraken, the goal coming into this one is to not allow another early goal. Of course, we talked about in the Vegas game, this habit that the Kraken have developed, although we talked about it being on the road, of allowing goals in the first few minutes of pretty much every single period. And while this game is at home, that habit seems to have come home with them, as at this point they've allowed a goal in the first 5 minutes of both the first and second periods. So coming into the third, yeah, they're definitely going to want to prevent this one from becoming 5-2 early on. And just 4 minutes into the period, there's a puck in a net. But this time it's a good thing because it's Jordan Eberle who put it there for the Kraken and not against them. As Wennberg and Eberle get on a 2-on-1 breakaway, Wennberg having the puck coming into the zone, he gets to the very last minute and then decides to pass over to Eberle, who puts it in. The Kraken finally are the ones on the odd man break and finally are the ones on the board early on in a period. So while maybe they didn't respond quickly to the Ducks goal at the end of the second period, they do respond pretty early on in the third and once again pull within one goal of Anaheim. So there you go, an exciting third period goal for the Kraken to get them back in the game. Of course, what did we talk about with late, meaningful goals from the Kraken? It's that you better hold your seats for the next couple of minutes, as there just might be a goal coming back the other way. And to the Ducks' credit, they try their absolute hardest to make sure that that happens here, as they get one breakaway completely free pretty soon after that face-off from the Kraken goal. Fortunately, while the puck does get past Grubauer, it hits the crossbar and stays out. Then Lauzon has the puck, and then he doesn't, and it's another breakaway. This one, Grubauer has to make the save, and does. So, 2 bullets dodged, and the game stays 3-4. So the Ducks aren't able to respond quickly, but at about the halfway point of the period, Hampus Lindholm takes a shot from the corner of the offensive zone that finds its way through just about every single player that's on the ice, except for himself and Gibson, who's in net for the Ducks, including Grubauer, and into the net once again to give Anaheim a 2-goal lead, making it 5-3. And while this one is ultimately just a lucky shot that somehow finds its way through seemingly 10 people before it gets into the net, it's also the type of shot that's a perfect example of why taking as many shots off on net as you can is a good strategy when it comes to getting the puck into the net. And for the Kraken, that was certainly an issue in this game. I mean, not necessarily getting the puck into the net, as they would end up scoring for a 4th time, but more the getting shots off on net is kind of the issue that they've had with the power play to this point in the season, has been that even when they do get set up and create pressure in the offensive zone, they're just way too hesitant to shoot the puck. That was certainly the issue for the Kraken in the first period, where once again they were able to get set up and create pressure, but just way too hesitant to take those shots, way too often looking for that extra pass than to just put the shot on net and hope for a rebound or maybe a lucky bounce and have it go in. The Ducks, they were definitely not shy to shoot the puck from just about anywhere throughout the course of the game, which definitely shows on this goal and even a couple of the other ones that end up going in, as well as in the shot totals, where by the end of the second period, they already had 25 shots on net, which for the Kraken, that's been their average coming into this game for shots allowed. And at this point in the game, even if there are about 10 minutes left in it and it could end up being too little too late, at least one Kraken player seems to have picked up on this strategy that shooting pucks on net could be a good thing, especially if you want to score more goals. And sure enough, 1 minute after Anaheim takes a 2-goal lead once again, it's Jared McCann rushing into the offensive zone. He throws on the brakes and fires a shot off on net because what the heck, right? And sure enough, it goes in. The Kraken pull within one for the fourth time in this game. It's 5-4. And for McCann, his second of the game, his first game back from that COVID protocol. And then, seeing what McCann just did, the rest of the team realizes, that might be a pretty good strategy. And following that goal by McCann, really for the first time since the first few minutes of the game, the Kraken are able to establish some sustained momentum and get more shots off on goal than they had at any other point in this game. Unfortunately, Gibson is up to the task at this point, is able to keep all those shots out, and at 3 minutes, Grubauer gets pulled just as Anaheim gets possession in their end. A couple of passes find the empty net, and then just in the last few seconds of the game, it's Terry finding the empty net for a second time, and that's how we end up getting to a 7-4 final. Once again, the Ducks winning their 6th straight, and the Kraken falling for the 3rd time in a row. So again, it's another disappointing loss to a team that should have been beatable, even though they are on a hot streak. But for the Kraken, they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to come out on the top of another game against Minnesota, as they will host the Wild for a second time coming up here on Saturday. For Grubauer, even after a strong first period, he ends up having another rough night, as really the Kraken as a whole only have a couple of guys that really stand out. One, of course, being McCann with his 2 goals, which does end up getting him the first star, even in a loss. And Jordan Eberle, who has a goal and an assist. But otherwise, the team really just has to find a way when they do have that offensive zone pressure to get more shots off on net. As tonight, even when they did get into the offensive zone, they were looking way too much for that one extra pass rather than taking the shot and looking for rebounds. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if they can change things and get some of that stuff turned around for this game coming up against Minnesota, which is a good team, but at least a team that they have beaten to this point in the season. Otherwise, if you made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help out the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. Otherwise, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game down in the comment section. And at least we have a team, right? It might be a team that has not gotten off to the start we would have liked them to, but they're still our team. Until next time, though, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.